The moment our CEO, Marion Caldwell, announced, "My son will take over this division," the room shifted, not physically, emotionally. You could feel something tighten in the air above the rows of employees gathered in the Charlotte headquarters. Then she turned to me, her voice smooth enough to cut. "And Jolie Mercer will stay on as his assistant. Or she can leave." I remember how still everything became. No typing, no murmurs. Just eyes, dozens of them waiting for me to defend myself. Marion seemed almost amused by the silence. Her son, Carter, standing beside her in a new suit he had not earned, gave me a small, practiced smile. "Jolie," she said, "is that agreeable?" I felt heat rise in my throat, but I kept my hands steady. 11 years of loyalty had prepared me well for moments when emotions tried to betray me. I met her gaze. I did not answer. I did not nod. I did not give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Someone near the back whispered, "She's going to take it." "She has to," another voice added. They backed her into a corner. Carter stepped forward, already assuming authority. "My mother thinks this transition will be smooth," he said. "I hope you'll support me." Still, I stayed silent. Marion's eyebrows lifted, as if she believed I simply needed time to accept my new place beneath her son. "You do not have to respond now," she said. "I expect your decision in the morning." I closed my notebook, the same one she had once praised as the brain of this entire operation, and walked past both of them. No explanation, no argument. Just my footsteps carrying me out of the room. Behind me, I heard one employee whisper, "She broke," but I had not broken. I had already decided. The choice had been made long before Marion tried to force it out of me. Last night, in the quiet of my apartment, I wrote a letter that spelled out every truth I had swallowed for years. I kept walking, steady and silent, knowing chapter 2 of my story had already begun. When I first came to Charlotte, I was 26 and carrying the ashes of a collapsed startup on my back. Blue Ridge Dynamics was the only company willing to take a chance on someone who had survived a failure that wasn't technically her fault, but still clung to her like smoke. Marion interviewed me in a cramped office with peeling nameplates and a printer that coughed every few minutes. "We are rebuilding," she said. "I need someone who won't quit the moment things get hard." I told her I had already lived through hard. She hired me the next morning. The first weeks were a blur of broken systems and panicked phone calls. At 9 in the evening one night, Marion stopped by my desk. "You are still here?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Eyes on the operations dashboard. "If this goes down again, we lose 3 clients." She watched me for a moment. "You work like the company belongs to you." "It could," I said quietly, "if we fix it." From there, the long nights multiplied. I rebuilt workflows, negotiated vendor contracts, and sat in on client meetings that technically were far above my pay grade. When we landed a major logistics account worth nearly $200,000 in annual revenue, Marion pulled me aside and whispered, "You are my right hand, Jolie, my family." I let myself believe her. Years slipped by in a pattern of sacrifice. I missed birthdays because a client needed a late-night audit. I canceled holidays because a system migration failed. I stayed through hurricanes, power outages, and one awful night when the servers crashed and I worked straight through until dawn. Marion would pat my shoulder and say, "One day, all of this will pay off. I promise." I held on to those words. They shaped every choice I made, every hour I gave away. By the time 11 years had passed, I had built something solid for her, something she could stand on. I just never imagined she would use it to push me off. Marion called me into her office less than an hour after the announcement. Her voice, overbright and strained, came through her assistant Jolie. She would like a private word. When I stepped inside, she closed the door gently, as if shutting out witnesses would soften what she had done. "I know this morning was abrupt," she began. "Transitions are never graceful." I stood across from her desk. You made it sound final. It is final, she said, folding her hands. But it does not have to be painful. Carter will take over, and you will support him. You know the operations better than anyone. He will rely on you. That is not what you said out there, I replied. She blinked, her smile wavering. Public messages must be simple, but behind closed doors, we can be reasonable. The door opened without a knock. Carter stepped in as if he already owned the room. Mother, do you want me for He glanced at me and grinned. Perfect. I was actually hoping to meet with my operations assistant soon. We have so much to go over. I am not your assistant, I said. Marion cleared her throat. Carter, let us finish this conversation. He shrugged and lingered by the desk, hands in his pockets. I turned back to Marion. If my role is changing, I want to review the revised job description in writing, and I want clarification on compensation adjustments, reporting structure, and transitional authority. My contract requires formal notice. A shadow passed over her expression. Let us not make this adversarial. Jolie, we do not need lawyers involved. Then give me answers. We will work out the details, she said. You do not have them. Do you? I asked quietly. Her silence answered for her. Carter smirked, glancing at his mother. It will be easier if she just accepts it. Something in me hardened, then clean, cold, irreversible. I saw clearly what I had refused to see for years. When the meeting ended, I walked out knowing exactly what I needed to do next. I spent that night in my small Charlotte apartment with every light off except the one above my kitchen table. My contract lay open in front of me, pages marked from years of updates and renewals. I had signed it 11 years earlier with the belief that Marion Caldwell would protect my future. Now I read it with a different purpose. Halfway through the document, a clause I had nearly forgotten stopped me cold. A material change in duties triggers full severance and nullifies all non-compete restrictions. I whispered the words aloud. They sounded like a key turning in a lock. Marion had counted on me being too shocked, too loyal, or too tired to remember what I had negotiated years before. She never imagined I would read every line again. I opened my archived emails, scrolling through years of promises and late-night messages. One chain from 5 years earlier stood out. Marion had written, Jolie, when the time is right, we will structure a succession plan that reflects your commitment. You are my future. She had copied the head of human resources. The board liaison had been included on the thread. She had put it in writing. I set the contract beside the emails and pulled a blank document onto my screen. The letter needed to be exact, free of anger, free of anything she could twist into insubordination or emotion. It had to be fact, evidence, and consequence. I wrote slowly, deliberately, attaching every supporting file. I addressed the board, the legal department, and Marion herself. I explained the demotion, the breach of contract, the misrepresentation of succession planning. I requested the severance owed by the clause she hoped I had forgotten. When the letter was complete, I read it once, then printed it. The decision was already made. The rest would unfold when she opened the envelope in the morning. I arrived at the office just after 7, before most of the team filtered in. My badge still worked. My desk still looked like mine, but I knew I was already gone. I pulled my small box from beneath the desk and began placing only what belonged to me inside it, one notebook. A framed photo. A pen Marion once gave me during a late-night crisis long before everything soured. I hesitated for a moment before dropping it into the box. It was only a pen now. Footsteps approached. Elena from accounting paused at my doorway. Jolie, you are packing? I am finishing up, I said. Her eyes widened. But yesterday Marion said I know what she said. I closed the box. I heard her. Elena stepped closer. Are you sure you want to do this? Maybe she will reconsider. I lifted the box into my arms. She already made her choice. I walked past her gently, not giving space for more questions. Marian's office door was unlocked. Sunlight hit the polished desk, and for a second, I remembered every night spent here fixing problems she never saw. I placed the sealed envelope in the center of the desk, aligned perfectly calm, deliberate, final. I turned and left without looking back. When I stepped into the hallway, several employees stared. Someone whispered, "She is really leaving." Another muttered, "She did not even argue." The shock in their voices followed me all the way to the elevators. By noon, I was home. My phone buzzed. "From Marian, have you made your decision?" The timing was almost amusing, her confidence resting on the assumption that humiliation would bring me to heel. I typed 4 words. "Read the letter I left." She did not respond. She would not respond until she opened that envelope and understood what my silence had really meant. The moment she read it, something inside her world would crack, and the sound would carry farther than she ever expected. By mid-morning, the Charlotte headquarters felt the shift before anyone understood it. I was not there, but the calls began almost immediately. Marian opened my letter at 8:23. I know the exact time because her assistant, shaken, later told a former colleague who texted me quietly. The moment the envelope tore, everything I had held back for 11 years sat in her hands. "Is this some kind of mistake?" Marian demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut through the glass walls of her office. Her assistant answered softly, "It is addressed to the board, and to legal, and to you." Carter stepped into the doorway. "Mother, what is—" Marian thrust the letter toward him. "She is accusing me of a contract breach." Carter scanned the first page. "Material change in duties, nullified non-compete, severance entitlement." His voice cracked. She remembered this clause. After all these years, she was never supposed to use it. Marian hissed. Then she reached the attachments, the email chains she thought were buried, the documented instructions she gave me to support Carter quietly, the risk reports from a major logistics client that she never forwarded to the board. The head of legal called moments later. "Marian, we need to meet. Now. You never disclosed the succession promises or the demotion terms. This exposes us. I managed everything internally." She tried to argue. "No." Legal replied. "You concealed material information." Before she could respond, her assistant interrupted with a trembling voice. "The client from Piedmont Freight is on the line again. They want to speak with Jolie. They said they will not finalize the contract without her." Carter paled. "I can talk to them. They asked for her." The assistant repeated. Marian pressed her fingers to her forehead. "Get the board on a call." The silence that followed wasn't calm. It was the sharp, brittle kind that comes right before something breaks for good. By the next morning, the fallout had begun to spread through Charlotte faster than Marian or Carter could contain it. I sat in a quiet cafe across from a recruiter, trying to steady my hands around a cup of coffee, when my phone buzzed with messages from former colleagues. One read, "The Piedmont Freight team threatened to terminate their entire contract unless you return." Carter tried to negotiate. "It went badly." Another followed, "The board is furious. They want answers Marian cannot give." Across the table, the recruiter smiled kindly. "Tell me why you left Blue Ridge," she said. "I was given an ultimatum." I replied, "Assist the CEO's son or walk away." "So I walked away." She raised an eyebrow. "You sound calm about it." I had 11 years to practice being calm. I said, "It does not mean I am not angry." My phone rang again. This time it was Lewis from sales, his voice low and urgent. "Jolie, Carter just told a client their system integration would take a few weeks. We both know it takes 3 months minimum. They asked who trained him. No one knew what to say. I am not coming back. I told him. I know. I just needed to say it out loud. It is chaos here." When I ended the call, the recruiter leaned forward. "You do not have to explain details, but it sounds like you carried more weight there than they realized." "They realized it." I said, They just thought I would never stop carrying it. A silence settled between us, not heavy, but grounding. For the first time in years, I was sitting in front of someone who saw me as a professional, not as a tool. "Let us schedule a second meeting," she said. "I think you are exactly the kind of leader Piedmont Systems needs." I exhaled slowly. Leaving Blue Ridge had terrified me, but watching the cracks widen without me revealed its own truth. I had never been the problem holding that place together. I had been the glue. Piedmont Systems called me 2 days after the interview. I was sitting at my kitchen counter, still half convinced I had imagined the recruiter's warmth, when the phone rang. "Jolie," she said, "the leadership team met this morning. We would like to offer you the operations director role. Full authority over restructuring, clean reporting lines, and no interference. We want you to build things the way you believe they should be built." I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. "That is more trust than I am used to." "You earned it," she replied. "You did not walk away from your last job. You walked toward a better one." On my first day, the CEO of Piedmont Systems, a direct and steady woman named Dana Pierce, greeted me with a firm handshake. "I know exactly what Blue Ridge lost," she said. "Let us make sure the industry knows what we gained." Within hours, I was in meetings where people actually listened. When I spoke, no one interrupted. When I pointed out structural issues, no one dismissed them. The shift was jarring, almost disorienting. By the end of the week, messages started coming in from old colleagues. "If I can get out of my contract, I want to follow you. They are blaming you for everything falling apart." But everyone knows the truth. If Piedmont has room for a systems analyst, please remember me. I answered each one carefully. "Give it time. Make your move when you are ready." 10 days in, Piedmont publicly announced my hiring. The press release described me as a critical strategic addition with a record of operational excellence. It circulated through Charlotte before noon. Dana stopped by my office that afternoon. "Reactions are strong," she said. "Some people are nervous." "They should be," I replied quietly. I am not hiding anymore. Starting over had felt like free fall. Now it felt like landing somewhere I should have stood all along. Blue Ridge's unraveling played out across Charlotte like a slow, public confession. Internal audits were launched. The board hired an outside firm to investigate governance failures. Every report circled back to decisions Marion had made, corners she had cut, and warnings she had ignored. A former colleague called me late one evening. "They forced her out today," he said quietly. "The board read your documentation. It is all in the audit record." And Carter, I asked. "He has been removed from leadership. They are calling it a competency review. But everyone knows what it means." I thanked him and ended the call. I felt no triumph, only a strange stillness, as if a long-held weight had finally been set down. 2 days later, Marion showed up at Piedmont Systems. Dana's assistant buzzed my office. "There is someone here asking for you," she whispered. "It is your former CEO." I stepped into the small meeting room, and Marion stood when she saw me. She looked smaller without the shield of her title. "Jolie," she said softly, "thank you for agreeing to see me." I remained standing. "What do you need?" "Marion, I need your help," she said. "The board will listen to you. They respect your voice. If you could just clarify a few things, we might be able to stabilize the narrative. You know how much damage this could cause. This is not my damage to fix." I said. Her throat tightened. "I trusted you for so many years. I believed you were family. You believed I would never question you." I replied. "That is not the same as trust." She stepped forward. "Please. Just a statement. Anything." I shook my head. "I am not returning to the past you created. Not as a savior and not as a shield." Marion's eyes lowered. She nodded once, quietly, and walked out. I returned to my office without looking back. The future was waiting, and I had finally stopped letting the past chase me into it. The day the public disclosures were released, I read them from my office at Piedmont Systems. Blue Ridge filed a formal acknowledgement of leadership failures, citing governance violations, ignored risk assessments, and internal warnings provided by senior staff. My name appeared once, in a single line. We commend Ms. Jolie Mercer for identifying risk and preventing further organizational harm. Dana knocked on my doorway. They finally admitted it. She said, "You were right. I did not write that letter to be right." I replied, "I wrote it because staying silent any longer would have broken something in me." She nodded and left me to the moment. I closed the report and leaned back in my chair. It was strange how the act that had felt so small when I printed it, the envelope I placed on Marion's desk without a word, had become the hinge on which everything turned. It had not been anger. It had been clarity, the kind that arrives only when you stop begging someone to see your worth. Late that evening, I stepped onto the rooftop terrace of the building. Charlotte stretched wide and quiet beneath the fading light. For 11 years, I had walked these streets believing Blue Ridge was the future I was supposed to build. I had given that company everything, my time, my energy, pieces of my life I can never retrieve. Now, for the first time, the city felt different, not like a place I had been trapped in, but a place offering room to breathe. My phone buzzed with a message from a former colleague. "Thank you for walking first. You showed us we can. 2. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The choices ahead no longer felt heavy. They felt open. One letter had ended the wrong story, and now I finally had space to begin the one that belonged to me.